the cat in the alley. Under the pale glow of a flickering streetlight, a lone black cat padded silently down a narrow alleyway. Its emerald eyes glimmered, reflecting the soft, fractured light, scanning the darkness with practiced ease. The uneven cobblestones beneath its paws were slick from the evening rain, each careful step a whisper against the quiet. The alley stretched long and crooked between the backs of forgotten buildings, their brick walls stained with age and shadow. Above, a sagging clothesline swayed gently in the breeze, casting jagged silhouettes across the alley's path. The cat paused beneath it, ears twitching at the distant clatter of a garbage bin tipping over 2 streets away. Its tail flicked once, slow and deliberate, before resuming its journey, weaving between rusted metal cans and discarded cardboard boxes, each one holding the faint scent of stories long past. The deeper into the alley the cat ventured, the narrower it became. The walls pressed in close, forcing the animal to crouch low, gliding like a wisp of smoke. A lone moth fluttered near a cracked window pane, wings brushing the glass, but the cat ignored it. This was not a night for chasing. There was purpose in its movement, a destination unseen, something pulling it forward through the maze of night and shadow. Halfway down, the cat stopped at a puddle. Moonlight fractured across its surface like broken glass. It stared at its own reflection, the glimmer of its eyes rippling with the water. Somewhere overhead, a window creaked open, and the soft hum of a radio spilled out into the alley. A human voice murmured beneath the static, just enough to remind the cat that the world above still turned, even while this dark, forgotten space stayed the same. At the alley's end, the cat came to an iron gate, its bars warped and rusted from years of rain and neglect. Beyond it, the shadows seemed deeper, the silence heavier. The cat sat, wrapping its tail neatly around its paws, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the gate. For now, it would wait, watching, listening, until the night offered up its next secret. The air grew colder near the gate, a sharp contrast to the humid breath of the city outside the alley's mouth. The cat's gaze remained fixed on the darkness beyond, but something shifted. The air itself seemed to hum, a faint vibration crawling up from the pavement. The cat's ears flicked back. Somewhere deeper within that darkness, a soft click echoed, like a latch being undone or a door creaking open when no door should be. Suddenly, the flickering streetlight behind the cat sputtered and died, plunging the alley into near total darkness. The only light left was the faint silver thread of moonlight, barely enough to sketch the outlines of the walls. The cat turned its head slowly, eyes narrowing, as if sensing something new. The alley didn't feel empty anymore. There was a presence now, watching from somewhere unseen, a shift in the shadows, a whisper that never reached the ears but settled in the bones. The cat rose to its feet, tail lashing once, and slinked through a narrow gap beside the rusted gate. On the other side, the world felt different. The alleyway behind it vanished into blackness, as though the entrance had never been there. Ahead, the space opened into a strange courtyard, a circular stone clearing surrounded by walls that stretched endlessly upward into the dark sky, with no windows, no doors. Only the cat, the stone beneath its feet, and the soft, rhythmic pulse of something alive within the walls. In the center of the courtyard stood a figure. At first glance, it seemed human, but as the cat crept closer, the figure remained unnaturally still, too still. Its face was obscured by a dark hood, head slightly bowed. The cat stopped, instinct warning it to turn back, but its body remained rooted. The figure raised a hand, slow, deliberate, and pointed directly at the cat. No words were spoken, but the message sank deep into the marrow. A shiver ran through the animal, its claws flexing instinctively against the cold stone. Then the figure moved, not walking but gliding backward, retreating into the shadows that clung to the edges of the courtyard. As it vanished into the black, the stone beneath the cat's paws grew warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. The walls around the courtyard began to close in, inch by inch, and as the darkness thickened, a low whisper began to rise, not from the figure, not from the cat, but from inside the walls. A chorus of voices trapped between the stone, murmuring, begging for release. The cat turned, but there was no escape. The alley was gone. The gate was gone. Only the courtyard remained, breathing and alive, closing tighter with every beat of the stone heart beneath its feet. The cat circled, body low, fur bristling as the space continued to shrink. The walls, impossibly high, pulsed in rhythm with that deep, thudding heartbeat beneath the stone. The whispers intensified, folding over one another into an eerie chant, syllables foreign yet terrifyingly familiar. Each word felt like a memory the cat couldn't quite place, echoing in the dark corners of its mind, awakening something long buried. The ground beneath its paws quivered, no longer stone, but something softer, something that breathed. In the midst of this suffocating space, the cat's sharp gaze caught movement. Across the courtyard, where the figure had retreated, the shadows began to twist, forming shapes, limbs, faces, distorted mouths stretched open in silent screams. Figures merged and then split, shifting in and out of existence like smoke caught in a breeze. They pressed against the unseen boundary of the courtyard, clawing at the walls, desperate to escape or to pull something else in. The cat's instincts screamed to flee, but its body wouldn't respond. Its paws felt anchored to the ground, as though invisible tendrils had crept up through the cracks, wrapping tightly around its legs. The chanting from the walls swelled, rising to a fevered pitch, drowning out the heartbeat beneath. And then the cat felt it, not just heard it, a voice inside its mind, clearer than the rest, not yet. Suddenly, the pulse beneath the courtyard ground stopped. Silence fell like a heavy shroud. The figures at the edge froze, mouths wide in frozen agony. The walls ceased their motion, holding just feet from the cat, enclosing it in a claustrophobic circle of stone. The darkness within the shrinking space seemed to breathe in, and as it did, the cat's reflection began to materialize on every inch of the encircling walls. But it wasn't the cat's face staring back. It was 1,000 versions of itself, twisted, starving, hollow-eyed, each reflection flickering like a candle flame, mouthing silent screams. And in the heart of every reflection's eyes, the cloaked figure stood motionless, pointing, reminding the cat that it wasn't the first to walk this path. And it wouldn't be the last. The reflections on the walls began to shift, flickering faster, as if cycling through infinite versions of the cat's life. Moments it had never lived flashed before its eyes, standing at the edge of rooftops, cowering beneath strange skies, walking alleys that twisted into mazes. In one reflection, the cat lay still, unmoving, as shadowy hands reached out to cradle its limp body. In another, it stalked something unseen, but with each step, its paws left behind stains of red. The walls weren't just showing what was, they showed what could have been, what might still be. The figures at the edges of the courtyard stirred again. This time they crept forward, emerging from the black like wraiths. They hovered, shapeless but heavy, the air thickening around them. Their eyes, hollow pits of darkness, never left the cat. And though they made no sound, the weight of their hunger, their need, pressed in like an unbearable weight on the chest. Their forms stretched unnaturally, gliding closer without taking a step, hands reaching fingers longer than they should be. The cat's body fought against its restraints, claws scraping against the now soft ground, but the tendrils held firm, tightening. The voice in its head returned, softer now, but more demanding. Become part of the walls. Join the echoes. The offer wasn't spoken with malice, but with a hollow promise of peace, as though surrender were the only way to end the torment. But deep within, the cat's spirit rebelled. A flash of instinct surged through its body. Its fur bristled, muscles tensed. With a sudden jerk, the cat twisted, forcing one paw free from the tendrils beneath. It swiped at the closest wraith, claws slicing through its form like smoke. The figure recoiled, dissolving back into the shadows. The heartbeat beneath the courtyard returned louder, faster, angry. The walls responded, trembling violently, the reflections distorting, the twisted faces melting into shapeless blobs of light and shadow. The cat lunged toward the rippling surface of the nearest wall, its claws connecting with the cold stone. But the wall didn't resist. It gave way like water, rippling outward. For a moment, the cat's paw disappeared into the black beyond, and it felt the pull of something else, a way out. But behind it, the figures screamed, voices no longer whispers but wails of rage, unwilling to let the cat go. The cat hesitated for only a moment, feeling the cold ripple of the wall pulling at its paw, like a current beneath ice. The wails behind it rose to a fever pitch, distorted voices calling its name, though it had no memory of giving it. The courtyard pulsed violently, the heartbeat becoming erratic, frantic, as if the very walls knew they were losing their grip. The tendrils beneath the cat's paws writhed, trying to reclaim the limb that had slipped free. But the cat didn't wait. It lunged fully into the wall. The sensation was like falling sideways through water, weightless but suffocating. The cat's body twisted unnaturally, caught in the current between this world and whatever lay beyond the stone. Shapes flickered past rooms, hallways, places it had never seen but felt deeply familiar. Time seemed meaningless here, folding in on itself as the cat drifted between flickers of memory and forgotten nightmare. Faces swam past in the blackness, blurred and empty-eyed, mouths still moving in silent pleas. Then, as suddenly as it had fallen, the cat felt ground beneath its paws again. The world solidified, the air sharp and bitter cold. It stood now in a different alley, wider, the walls slick with fresh rain. The flickering street lamp buzzed overhead, casting fractured light across the wet cobblestones. Behind it, the wall from which it had emerged was solid once more. No ripples, no gate, no sign that it had ever been more than brick and mortar. But something wasn't right. The air tasted different, metallic, tinged with the faint scent of smoke. The city beyond was too still, the wind absent, the silence heavy. Somewhere in the distance, a single cry echoed a human voice or something else. It wasn't clear. The cat crouched low, every muscle taut, as the shadows in the alley seemed to lengthen, creeping toward it, as if aware of its presence. And then, faintly, carried on the still air, a whisper rose once again. No words, just the soft hum of something that had followed, something that wasn't finished. The cat's ears flattened, eyes narrowing as it crouched low against the slick ground. The shadows along the alley's edges seemed to stretch further now, reaching toward the faint circle of light cast by the flickering lamp. Each tendril of darkness crept closer, inch by inch, as though testing the boundary between safety and surrender. The cat's body tensed, ready to bolt, but the alley itself felt suffocating, as if the space had shrunk, walls leaning inward, sealing it inside. A low vibration hummed beneath the ground, subtle at first, then growing stronger. It wasn't the pulse of a machine or the tremor of nearby footsteps. It was deeper, primal, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The cat's paws shifted instinctively, sensing the rhythm. Its gaze darted toward the mouth of the alley, now much farther than it had been before. The world seemed to stretch, distorting the distance, turning a simple escape into an impossible journey. The buzzing from the street lamp intensified, emitting an unnatural flicker that stung the cat's sensitive eyes. Brief flashes of something reflected off the wet cobblestone shapes that didn't belong. Figures, fleeting and translucent, drifting just beyond the veil of light, watching. Their forms wavered, faceless but human-like, standing silently at the edges of perception. The cat hissed, a low warning, but the figures didn't retreat. They hovered, patient, as though they knew the game always ended the same. The vibration beneath the ground surged, and with it came a sound low at first, then unmistakable. A distant chorus of murmurs, echoing from somewhere unseen, folding over each other, threading through the alley like smoke. No clear words, just the persistent hum of something ancient, something that had waited far longer than the cat could ever comprehend. The air thickened, heavy as oil, and the cat could feel its legs grow heavier beneath it, as though the ground itself resisted its movement. But the cat did not freeze. Its eyes flared wide, muscles coiling, and with a sudden surge of instinct it darted forward, paws slapping against wet stone, claws catching at uneven cracks. It sprinted toward the alley's end, chasing the faintest glimpse of freedom, the shadows lashing at its heels. And as it leapt into the open street beyond, the cat didn't dare look back, because whatever followed, whatever whispered it, was still there, waiting in the dark. The cat bolted down the empty street, its sleek form a shadow among shadows, paws barely making a sound against the rain-slicked pavement. It didn't stop, didn't slow. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum in its chest, the rhythm matching the pulsing in the air behind it. The city stretched ahead, blocks of darkened buildings, silent windows, empty roads, yet none of it felt familiar. Every corner turned, revealed the same repeating streets, looping endlessly beneath a starless sky. A soft whisper tugged at its ears again, teasing, distant but constant. The voice wasn't chasing the cat, it was guiding it, pulling it deeper. The further it ran, the more the streets seemed to fold into each other, twisting back toward the place it fled from. The cat's sharp instincts screamed at it, telling it that the escape was just an illusion, but the city itself had turned into a maze, and the further it ran, the closer it circled back to whatever owned the night. Slowing, panting softly, the cat crouched beneath an abandoned car, its golden eyes scanning the road ahead. The shadows crept even here, slithering beneath the street lamps, coiling in cracks and alleys. And then there it was again, a faint pulse beneath the ground, the heartbeat it thought it left behind. The same rhythm, the same pull. It hadn't escaped. It had been allowed to believe it escaped. Across the street, a shape formed at the mouth of a narrow alley. The figure was still, as though waiting. Hooded, featureless, the same as before. The figure didn't move, but the world around it seemed to bend, the space warping subtly, forcing the cat's gaze to linger. Behind the figure, the alley stretched endlessly into a black void. The cat's fur bristled, knowing that whatever waited in that darkness had followed it, had always been watching. The cat stepped out from beneath the car, unwilling to cower. It stood its ground, tail lashing once, eyes locked on the figure that stood between it and the unknown. The figure raised a hand again, slow, deliberate, pointing not at the cat, but at the darkness behind it. The cat turned its head, fur rising as the air grew colder. The street behind it was no longer empty. The shadows had gathered, thick and crawling, filling the space it had run from. The city itself had become a circle, and at the center of it all, the heartbeat pulsed louder, demanding that the cat listen. The cat crouched lower, body coiled tight, but there was nowhere left to run. Every street curved back, every escape folded inward like the walls of the courtyard it had fled. The figure across the way stood unmoving, arm still raised, as if directing the shadows that now gathered behind the cat. The heartbeat beneath the pavement throbbed louder, syncing with the cat's own, each pulse a signal that something deeper was waking, something ancient beneath this twisted city. As the cat turned its gaze back toward the hooded figure, it noticed the space around them shimmering faintly, like heat rising from asphalt. The air distorted, bending light and shadow alike. Slowly, the figure began to lower its hand, dissolving into the darkness, as if it had served its purpose. But the cat realized the gesture hadn't been meant to threaten, it had been a warning. Whatever was behind the cat now was worse. Turning, the cat faced the gathering shadows, now pulsing in rhythm with that infernal heartbeat. From within the mass, faint outlines emerged. Legs, arms, faces blurred like reflections in rippling water. They were all the same figures it had seen pressed into the courtyard walls, now freed, creeping forward. But their eyes' hollow pits of blackness glowed faintly with the same eerie light that had spilled beneath the courtyard gate. They weren't just shadows. As they drifted closer, the cat backed against the edge of the sidewalk, claws scraping the concrete, the hair along its spine standing tall. The forms halted just feet away, swaying softly, as if waiting for something. The heartbeat slowed. The whispering voices grew softer, weaving together into one coherent thought. Return. The cat held its ground, glaring into the soulless voids before it. And then, from somewhere beneath the city below the streets, under the stone, a low, guttural sound rose. A deep rumble that shook the earth, promising that this wasn't the end of the chase. The cat knew then. The darkness wouldn't stop. The city wouldn't let it go. Not until it chose whether to return or face what lay deeper beneath. The cat's chest heaved, its breath sharp and quick, vapor curling in the cold air. The whisper had faded, but the weight of the word return lingered like a chain around its body. It glanced toward the open street, wondering if freedom still lay beyond the next block, or if the city itself had sealed every exit, trapping it in this warped loop of streets and shadows. Somewhere distant, a church bell rang once, hollow and distant, marking a time that didn't seem to exist here. One of the shadowed figures stepped forward, its form rippling like smoke caught in wind. Its face remained featureless, but its presence was suffocating. It extended a long, thin arm, not to strike, but to beckon, inviting the cat to submit, to surrender. The others followed, surrounding the cat in a slow, deliberate circle, never rushing, never forcing, just waiting, as though they knew that in the end, all things came back. The heartbeat beneath the ground began again, slower this time, more patient. It wasn't the erratic drumbeat of a predator chasing prey. It was the steady rhythm of something eternal, something that knew how to wait. The cat crouched, tail lashing furiously, its claws scraping sparks from the stone beneath its paws. But inside, a dread deeper than instinct gnawed at it, the realization that these things had no need to rush. They could wait a lifetime. The shadows crept closer, their dark forms merging together, forming a solid wall of blackness, hemming the cat in. For a moment, the world narrowed to that tiny space between the figures and the cat's beating heart. The lamplight overhead sputtered once more, casting their elongated forms into grotesque shapes. But even as they closed in, the cat's eyes remained defiant, fixed not on the shadows, but on the distant horizon it could no longer see. And then, as if sensing the cat's resistance, the ground trembled once more. The pavement cracked beneath its paws, splitting open just enough for a thin sliver of light to emerge. Not bright, not warm, but different. A path, another choice. The shadows recoiled slightly, their patience thinning. The cat's heart raced faster now, torn between the endless dark pressing in around it and the faint, unknown glow beneath its feet. Stay and be consumed. Return and repeat. Or leap into the unknown. The cat's eyes locked onto the thin sliver of light, its pale glow slicing through the darkness like a lifeline. The crack beneath its paws widened just enough to offer a way out, but the light itself felt unnatural, neither inviting nor safe. It shimmered faintly, pulsing out of sync with the heartbeat beneath the ground, as if it came from somewhere else entirely, a place outside the reach of the shadows pressing in. The cat's tail flicked once, torn between the terror behind it and the uncertainty below. The figures surrounding the cat began to shift, their forms wavering, their patience fraying. They leaned closer, the hollow pits of their eyes deepening, stretching into swirling voids. The hum in the air grew sharper, vibrating the cat's bones, urging it to submit. But the cat's claws dug into the cracked pavement, muscles coiling as it stared down at the thin beam of light beneath its feet. Whatever lay below, it was different than the endless loops of shadow and stone. It was unknown, and the unknown was better than being consumed. The ground trembled again, a silent warning, as if whatever force ruled this place knew the cat's decision. The shadows pressed tighter, the circle closing in, trying to snuff out the crack of light before the cat could act. Their whispered chant returned, soft but urgent return. Return, return, return. But the cat crouched low, hind legs tensing, body ready to spring, its yellow eyes flaring bright against the gloom. With one sharp breath, the cat lunged downward, plunging into the sliver of light, the crack swallowing its small body in a flash. The shadows shrieked a horrible, guttural sound, not of rage, but of hunger denied. The alley above folded in on itself, the street lamp's flickering glow finally snuffed out, leaving the world above in utter blackness. The shadows, the figures, the heartbeat, they all dissolved, retreating back into whatever ancient pit had birthed them. And below, the cat fell through layers of light and darkness, tumbling between worlds that blurred together, places that never existed, places that had always been. The hum above faded, replaced by silence, then a faint whisper of wind. The cat landed softly, paws touching down on cool stone. It stood, ears flicking as it scanned its new surroundings. No shadows, no figures, just a long, narrow tunnel stretching endlessly forward, lit by that faint glow. The air smelled different here, cleaner, untouched. The cat took a cautious step forward, knowing the hunt wasn't over. It had simply begun somewhere deeper.